For decades, Boeing has been one of the most important industrial companies in the United States. Its factory in Everett, Washington is the largest manufacturing facility of any kind anywhere in the world. At its peak in 2018, Boeing generated over $100 billion of revenue and was the single largest exporter in the United States by value. Over the past 6 years, Boeing has faced numerous disasters. It started with the two tragic crashes of 737 MAX planes, which left 346 people dead. Since then, the company has experienced a string of safety issues, production issues, worker strikes, and cost overruns, which have led to severe financial difficulty. Safety and quality control issues have already forced 2 CEOs to resign in disgrace. Today, Boeing is in a desperate financial position, having lost money every year since 2019. The company's financial position was so bad that in October of 2024, they had to conduct a $21 billion dilutive equity raise to shore up their balance sheet. This is the largest secondary offering in the history of the US stock market. In this video, we'll take a look at Boeing's recent problems and what we can expect from the company going forward. When researching videos like this one, I look at hundreds of different news sources. With every media outlet having its own political bias, it can be hard to get a balanced perspective on controversial topics. That's why I've been using Ground News for my research, which is also the sponsor of today's video. Ground News is the world's first news comparison platform. They are an app and a website that brings together related stories in one place to highlight important perspectives often overlooked by mainstream media. For example, let's look at the recent strike by Boeing workers. On Ground News, we can see that 254 media outlets covered this topic. They rank each media outlet on a bias scale, so you can compare the left-wing, right-wing, and centrist perspectives on any topic. For example, the right-wing articles often use more dramatic language, talking about the huge losses Boeing incurred and the massive windfall for the union. The left-wing articles have a more favorable tone, talking about how the resolution of the strike is good for Boeing. One of their best features is a blind spot feed. It curates important stories that get little to no attention from one side of the political spectrum. It's a great way to broaden our perspective, and has been great at helping me uncover stories I normally wouldn't have seen. So if you want to outsmart deceptive algorithms and see the bigger picture, Ground News is a tool for you. Ground News is giving my viewers 50% off their unlimited access Vantage plan, which I use to access all these features. This amounts to less than $5 per month. This is their best deal of the year, and it will only be available for a limited time. So make sure to use my link ground.news/WSM to sign up. And now back to the video. Boeing is in the business of selling airplanes. Thus, the most important KPI is how many airplanes they sell. Today, Boeing makes 4 models of commercial aircraft: the 737, the 767, the 777, and the 787. In 2023, Boeing delivered 528 commercial jets to airlines around the world. At 396 deliveries, the 737 is Boeing's most popular airplane by far. The second most popular is the 787 Dreamliner, which sold 73 units. The 737 and 787 combined make up almost 90% of Boeing's commercial aircraft deliveries. They sold 32 767s and 26 777s. In 2023, one lonely 747 rolled off the production line. This was the last 747 to ever be built. Boeing has now officially ended production of this giant double-decker aircraft. The 737 MAX and 787 Dreamliner are the most modern aircraft in Boeing's commercial lineup. The main innovation is their increased fuel efficiency. Jet fuel is a huge expense for airlines, so they are willing to pay a large premium for more fuel-efficient planes. The 737 MAX is extremely fuel efficient, but it is a small aircraft with limited flying range. It is suitable for short-haul flights, for example, domestic US flights or flights within Europe. The 787 is a far larger airplane, capable of transatlantic and transpacific flights. The list price of the 737 MAX is over $100 million. The list price of the 787 Dreamliner is over $200 million. The prices can vary depending on which variant you want to buy. However, Boeing typically gives discounts to airlines if they commit to buying a large number of planes. So the average selling price is far lower than the list price. In 2023, Boeing generated $64 million of revenue for each commercial aircraft it sold. If you're watching this video, you probably already know about the long-running safety issues that have plagued the 737 MAX. It started with a tragic crash of Lion Air Flight 610 in October of 2018, which took the lives of all 181 passengers and crew on board. In March of 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, which was also a 737 MAX, crashed under very similar circumstances. Just as with Lion Air, there were no survivors, thus bringing the death toll up to 346. Both crashes were caused by faulty software. If you want a more detailed explanation, you can watch this video we made previously, linked in the description below. Almost immediately following the second crash, aviation regulators around the world banned the aircraft from flying. Needless to say, this was a disaster for Boeing. All of a sudden, their single most important airplane could no longer fly. Following the groundings, most airlines canceled their orders, although there were still a few that continued accepting delivery in anticipation that the planes would eventually be able to return to service. Boeing's commercial aircraft deliveries fell from 806 in 2018 to just 157 in 2020. Most of this decline can be attributed to the 737 MAX. Deliveries of the 787 Dreamliner also declined significantly in 2020. This was not due to any safety or regulatory issues. Instead, many airlines were under pressure due to the pandemic and postponed planned deliveries of new airplanes. Boeing ultimately fixed the software issue that caused the Lion Air and Ethiopian Air crashes. In November of 2020, the FAA finally gave the green light for the 737 MAX to return to the skies. Boeing ultimately agreed to pay $2.5 billion in fines and compensation related to the incident. This included $1.8 billion of compensation to the airlines, $500 million to the families of the victims, and a $240 million criminal penalty related to Boeing's attempts to cover up the cause of the Lion Air crash. The entire debacle around the 737 MAX was a humiliating tragedy, but for a time, it looked like this affair might disappear into the rearview mirror. Following the FAA's green light, airlines were more than happy to start flying the 737 MAX again. Remember that the 737 MAX is one of the most fuel-efficient options for short-haul flights. Boeing started gradually ramping up production of the MAX. In 2023, they delivered 396 of these aircraft. Unfortunately, Boeing's troubles were far from over. Even as the 737 MAX was re-entering service, they started to have problems with their second most important aircraft, the 787 Dreamliner. Throughout 2019 and 2020, a number of airlines had noticed quality control issues with their 787s. Things like loose seats, incorrectly installed pins, nuts and bolts not fully tightened, and improper fuselage shimming. Most of these problems were able to be fixed after the fact and have thus far not caused any serious incidents. But it's certainly not a good sign. The root cause of these issues likely stems from Boeing's decision in 2019 to lay off 900 quality inspectors. Boeing argued that due to their increased use of automation and high-precision manufacturing techniques, the need for quality inspections had diminished. This gave them the opportunity to cut costs by eliminating these positions. As it turns out, Boeing massively overestimated the quality of its manufacturing. In 2021, the FAA forced them to temporarily halt production to sort out the quality control issues. The company also started rehiring many of the quality inspectors that had previously laid off. In August of 2022, the FAA allowed Boeing to resume production of the aircraft. By 2023, they had ramped up production to 73 units. This is still less than half of their pre-COVID delivery numbers. The FAA is closely monitoring Boeing's 787 production line. This likely limits Boeing's ability to ramp up production as fast as they probably want to. In January of 2024, there was a dramatic incident where a door plug fell off a 737 MAX operated by Alaska Airlines. The door plug was not installed properly, and Boeing's quality control failed to identify the problem before the plane was delivered. Another high-profile safety issue was the last thing that Boeing needed. At the end of the day, the root cause of all the issues at Boeing has been a corporate culture that prioritized producing as many airplanes as possible, as quickly as possible, and at the lowest cost possible. Unfortunately, this has come at the expense of quality control and safety. Following the Alaska Air incident, the FAA instituted a production cap. Boeing is not allowed to make more than 38 737 MAX planes per month. The FAA fears that if left to its own devices, Boeing would expand production beyond what its quality control teams can handle. As if Boeing wasn't facing enough problems, in September of 2024, a union representing 33,000 Boeing machinists conducted a labor strike. The strike ultimately lasted for 7 weeks, ending on November 4th. Boeing agreed to a 38% pay increase over the course of 4 years. This will cost the company $1.4 billion annually. These wage increases come at a time when Boeing is already struggling financially. Based on production numbers from the first 3 quarters, they're on track to deliver approximately 388 commercial aircraft in 2024. This is less than half of the 806 commercial aircraft they delivered in 2018. This relatively low level of aircraft sales is not enough to cover the company's massive fixed costs. In the first 9 months of 2024, Boeing's commercial aircraft segment generated $17 billion of revenue and incurred an operating loss of almost $6 billion. In addition to making commercial aircraft, Boeing also makes a wide variety of military aircraft, missiles, and satellites. For example, they make the F-15 fighter jet, the Apache attack helicopter, and a wide range of large cargo aircraft. Boeing has 3 operating segments: commercial, defense, and global services. Global services includes aftermarket maintenance, repairs, and spare parts for Boeing's military and commercial aircraft. The global services segment is the most consistent because it does not rely on new production. Existing Boeing planes will need maintenance work for as long as they fly. In 2018, the commercial segment contributed 57% of Boeing's consolidated revenue. 26% came from the defense segment, with the remaining 17% coming from global services. In 2019 and 2020, commercial revenue collapsed for the reasons we discussed previously. The defense business was not directly impacted by the 737 MAX situation or the pandemic, so defense revenue remained relatively stable. Now let's look at profitability. In 2018, all 3 segments were profitable. Since 2019, the commercial segment has reported operating losses every year. The defense segment was profitable until 2022, when it reported a $3.5 billion loss. Since then, it has continued to lose money. Based on current trends, the defense segment could lose as much as $4 billion in 2024. So what went wrong? The seeds of Boeing's defense problems go back more than a decade. Throughout the 2010s, Boeing wanted to grow very rapidly, both in their commercial and defense businesses. In hindsight, they tried to expand the commercial business too fast, thus leading to safety issues. In hindsight, the company was also far too aggressive in trying to expand its defense business. The defense business is very different from the commercial business. In the commercial business, you just design an airplane with high fuel efficiency and airlines will buy it. For military aircraft, the procurement process is far more complicated. The military has very specific requirements of what capabilities they want the new aircraft to have. This often requires the development of new technologies that have never been built before. The development timeline for new military aircraft can be extremely long and difficult to predict. For example, Lockheed Martin's F-35 program is infamous for being many years behind schedule and hundreds of billions of dollars over budget. The F-35 contract was on a cost-plus basis. If the project is over budget, the government is on the hook to pay for this, not Lockheed Martin. In general, defense contractors prefer cost-plus contracts where the government agrees to cover all the development costs plus a fixed profit margin. This way, the contractor is guaranteed to make a profit. Any cost overruns are billed to the government. The Pentagon prefers fixed-price contracts. Under a fixed-price contract, the government agrees to pay a fixed price for the finished product. Any cost overruns are paid for by the defense contractor. In the case of the F-35, the technical requirements were so great and the development process so complicated that no contractor was willing to build it for a fixed price. The government had no choice but to agree to a cost-plus contract. Whenever the government wants to develop a new aircraft, any defense contractor can submit a bid. All else equal, the government will prefer a fixed-price bid over a cost-plus bid. Now that we understand a little bit about military procurement, let's return to Boeing. In an attempt to expand its defense business, Boeing submitted fixed-price bids where many of its competitors were only willing to do cost-plus. This indeed allowed them to win many contracts, but at great cost. For example, in 2011, they were awarded a $5 billion contract to develop and build a new mid-air refueling aircraft called the KC-46. Boeing thought this would be a pretty easy job. They based the airframe off their existing 767 commercial aircraft. The KC-46 is basically a heavily modified 767. As Boeing would soon find out, converting a passenger plane into a mid-air refueling aircraft is easier said than done. The program has been bogged down by numerous delays and technical difficulties, and is currently $7 billion over budget. Because it's a fixed-price contract, Boeing is on the hook for all of these cost overruns. Boeing has also lost more than $2 billion on a separate fixed-price contract to build a new Air Force One. The Air Force One is an incredibly complicated airplane, with numerous communications and safety features. Having recognized their past hubris, Boeing is no longer bidding for fixed-price contracts, but they are still contractually obligated to complete the contracts they signed in the past. For the next few years, we can likely expect the defense segment to continue losing money. It's hard to overstate what a disastrous position Boeing finds itself in today. Their only profitable segment is global services, and this isn't nearly enough to cover the massive losses from the commercial and defense segments. In 2024, the company is on track to lose more than $8 billion. In August of 2024, Boeing appointed a man named Kelly Ortberg to be the new CEO. He previously served as a CEO of the defense contractor Rockwell Collins. Ortberg has promised to be realistic about the significant challenges facing the company. They need to completely change their corporate culture to put safety and quality above all else. Cutting corners to maximize short-term profits is not in the long-term interest of shareholders. Until Boeing can regain the trust of the FAA, they will be forced to abide by the monthly production cap. It could take years before they can ramp production back to 2018 levels. In the meantime, they will likely continue to incur operating losses. In October of 2024, the company made the difficult but necessary decision to raise $21 billion via the issuance of new shares. This was massively dilutive to existing shareholders, but it buys the company a couple more years of runway to turn things around. Despite the numerous challenges Boeing has faced in recent years, it is still one of the most important aerospace companies in the world. For many classes of commercial aircraft, they form a duopoly with Airbus. Given the reputational damage Boeing has suffered, many airlines would prefer to buy planes from Airbus instead. But Airbus's production capacity is limited. Building airplanes is a complicated task. It can take years to add new production lines. Because Airbus is already fully booked, they haven't been able to benefit much from Boeing's troubles. Instead, Boeing's production issues have caused a global shortage of passenger planes. This shortage will only become more acute over time as air travel continues to increase in developing markets like China and India. Most airlines are happy to procure new aircraft from whoever can supply them. Boeing currently has a backlog of commercial aircraft orders worth over $500 billion. If they can sort out their production problems, there is almost unlimited demand. They just need to make sure the planes can fly and the door plugs don't come falling off. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about Boeing? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.